poquito he aprendido a llorar en la vida y también a gozarla bonito. A mi modo he llevado la vida, así pienso seguirla llevando. A mi modo aprendí de mujeres, poco a poco me he ido enseñando, unas veces gozando con ellas y otras veces por ellas llorando. A mi modo que sea mi sepelio, que se sirva tequila y cerveza, que me toque el norteño y la banda, que ninguna cara.
I'll tell you guys, I never get tired of hearing that song. I saw you moving your head, Victor. I saw you.
I'm like, okay, this is how it is. All right.
Now you're at home.
I felt right at home with that song and intro. I love it.
Exactly. Hey, guys, before we get started, let me give a warm welcome to everybody that's joining us from different parts of the country. We got VP 760 all the way from Valle Imperial. We got San Diego PD legend from Team 4. San Diego PD, he's your little protege, or not your little, the guy's 6'4", Doug. Chris Kilby, legend, San Diego PD. We got San Diego Sheriff, legend, Roger Demchuk. Hola, amigos, estoy listo para otro gran espectáculo. Gracias, chicos, por su arduo trabajo detrás de escena. Con eso dicho, salud. Dude, he had to use translation because he doesn't speak English, but Spanish, I mean. So welcome, brother. And we got another legend watching us all the way from LA. Former, we got right here. Where? I just lost you right here, Ruben. Right here, Ruben. Let me tell you, Victor, about Ruben. Ruben Nava was a legend with the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. The guy, I mean, literally worked gangs, worked narcotics, and now that he's retired after over 30 years of service, he's actually a chaplain in East LA, where he left off as a detective sergeant. He's a chaplain now, helping police officers. What a legend, man! What a legend. We got Benny Cruz watching us. Benny Cruz, our co-host and the producer of the Gray Line. Welcome, Big Benny. We got Ceci all the way from Riverside. And believe it or not, brother, we got Jim Tejanis. He's watching us, Victor, all the way from Thailand right now. Wow. I believe it's 5 o'clock in the morning or 6 in the morning. He got up to see you, brother. But he's a former correctional officer, and he worked Pelican Bay for, I believe, 24 years. During the riots. This guy's another legend. We got a bunch of legends watching us. We got Big Joe from Salinas, and we go on and on and on. And like I said, man, what a blessing to have all these guys. But guys, before we get started, Victor, Bobby's going to do the big introduction. But before we get started, Bobby, we'll start off with you. You're not the mandilon like me. You're actually smoking a cigar in your house. My wife doesn't let me. Tell us what you're smoking and what you're drinking, brother.
As always, I'm always loved Espinosa Cigars. My friends from Espinosa Cigars, Eric Espinosa, Hector Alfonso. And I'm smoking a L'Orange de Azul. Let's see.
Oh, great cigar.
There it is. I love this one right there. And I'm smoking the last of my Mills and Mash I opened a few shows ago. There it is. And right here. Cheers, everyone.
Salud.
I have to get up and run to the liquor store. Halfway through, you'll see I'll be the liquor store is close by. I might have to run out for refill.
Make sure to get some moonshine, some Chicano moonshine, some good tequila. Big Doug, what are you drinking, brother?
I got some Garrison Brothers Premium Select bourbon. It's out of Texas. It's pretty good. It's pretty good, and that's what I'm going to join you with you guys today. No cigar for me because I'm indoors too.
Exactly. We're mandilones. Big Doug, what are you drinking, brother?
I've got some Bradshaw Kentucky bourbon. It's his rye, and it's Terry Bradshaw. And there's all kinds of references to all the Super Bowls and everything else in his football career. And it's really, really nice. It's really smooth. And if you're a rye person, I think you'd enjoy it.
Are you drinking it on the rocks or neat?
No, I'm drinking it neat.
Neat.
Oh, what a man. What a man. Right. Guys, I'm drinking Basil Hayden, and there's my drink right here, Basil Hayden. I actually today decided to put Topo Chico and I mixed it. Y sabes que? It's not a bad drink. It's not a bad drink at all. But with that said, I know you got a big shout out. Doug, tell us about your shout out. And it's a very sad one, but it's for a great cause. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah. So I have some friends at San Diego PD, Nick Wynn and his wife, Sarah. He's a sergeant at the PD, and they lost their home last weekend. And it's a total loss. And they both run businesses also and a nonprofit charity out of their home. So they've lost everything. But the nonprofit charity that they run is called First Responders Whiskey Society. And it started off as just a social club. And then I think it was in 2002, they turned it into a charity. But they raise funds for first responders in times of need, deaths, injuries, catastrophic events in their families. And I think this year they've raised over $120,000 so far, and they've got like 10,000 members. So if you have an opportunity, jump on First Responders Whiskey Society website and you can join it. It's a wonderful organization. And then his wife, Sarah, she also has an Instagram business that she does, and it's called Whiskey Nomad. So look it up, Whiskey Nomad. And she's actually a certified spirits consultant. She travels all over the world to different distilleries and gives reviews. She does judging and stuff. But they really give a lot back to, our family, law enforcement, first responders families. And now they're in time of need. There is a GoFundMe page, but GoFundMe takes a pretty good chunk of whatever donations. If you want to give a donation, you can do it directly to Nick through his Venmo, and they'll get the money directly. They're going to use it to. They got to find some place to live for the next probably year until they figure out whether they have to rebuild or sell off whatever they have, and they've lost everything: clothing, all their personal items. They could use a little help. Really love them.
And during the show, Doug, I'm going to be putting up his where they could donate. So to remind people that are not currently watching us. One last shout out. We want to welcome Felony Fuzz. That's Tony Moreno. Now this guy's another legend. You guys watch that movie Colors, Pac-Man? It was actually made out of his life, and he has a great book. Felony Tony Moreno. He's watching us right now. Welcome to the show, brother. I think this is the first time you watch. Thank you for watching, and we're going to have you on our show hopefully in the near future. Awesome. Welcome. Bobby, it's all yours, brother.
Well, thank you. First of all, I want to welcome our guest, Victor Avila. I'm honored that he agreed to come on our show.
Yeah.
I've known Victor. I knew Victor online. I met him online on Twitter. We have a lot of common interests. We're very concerned about what's going on at our border and the danger that it presents to our country. So without further ado, I want to introduce Victor. Victor is a retired supervisory special agent with Homeland Security Investigations, HSI, under ICE. He is also the author of Agent Under Fire, A Murder and a Manifesto, and also the National Ambassador for Veterans for America First. HSI is responsible for investigating crimes involving immigration, trade, customs, and border security that threaten the security of American homeland. While serving with HSI, Victor personally led criminal investigations of human traffickers, drug smugglers, and violent criminals. During his time with ICE HSI, Victor also served as an accredited diplomat to Mexico, Spain, and Portugal. Victor advises governments on complex and wide-ranging criminal investigations, including narcotics, trafficking, arms trafficking, human trafficking, financial violations, commercial fraud, and counterterrorism. And here we go. While on assignment in Mexico, Special Agent Avila suffered multiple gunshot wounds and survived a violent ambush by the Mexican drug cartel Los Zetas, where Special Agent, his partner at the time, Jaime Zapata, tragically lost his life. During the sad part about this, and I think I'm going to have Victor explain it, of the betrayal from our government in protecting our personnel, not only before this happened, but after, letting them down and just leaving them out, hanging them out to dry. I just want to thank Victor, and I'm honored that you're here, Victor. And like I said, I was very happy I was finally able to meet you in person a little over a year ago.
Yeah.
But welcome, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much. I'm honored. I'm honored to be with you guys because you're legends in your own right with everything that you've done in your public service. So I want to thank you, and I'm really thankful to be here, especially in this setting, having a little drink, salud. And so, that's my passion. Despite and what you said earlier, Robert, I got identified a lot as, well, that's the agent that got shot, or that's the agent that survived this ambush. And yeah, that did happen to me. And I'm here by the grace of God, taking 3 bullets. And I will share that story as much as I can every single time that I can, and to honor Special Agent Jaime Zapata, who tragically lost his life in the line of duty in Mexico. But I also did other things, and I was a decent investigator. I was a hardworking agent, and I'm proud of that. You guys know that not everybody works. Not everybody else in this line of work works, and I like to work, and that doesn't make you anything special other than I like to be out there in the sources and the digging and digging and digging, no matter where I was at. I started off as when I graduated from UTEP in El Paso with a criminal justice degree. I started off as a state parole officer, and so that I was 22 years old. That introduced me to the criminal world. I thought everybody that went to prison stayed in prison, and that's not quite the truth. Everybody, almost all of them, at one point will come out and will be amongst our community. And these are violent offenders, gang members, sex offenders, you name it. And I supervised these guys, and I really got immersed into that criminal culture, criminal underworld, really learning a lot from them, believe it or not, if that makes any sense. I talked a lot to these gang intelligence officer. As a matter of fact, next week I'll be at the Texas Gang Investigator Association speaking there. I was a member of the TGIA and really working hand in hand with the PDs and the SOs, because a lot of these guys were on parole. And unfortunately, the recidivism rate is very high, and they continue to commit crimes. Then I learned that there was kind of the same position at the federal level that paid twice as much. And so I jumped ship, and I went to become a federal probation officer. And federal supervision, they call it federal probation with the U.S. courts. But I also learned the court system, the pre-sentence reports, the district judges, the attorneys, the defense counsels, all that, and really got immersed in that. But I thought I was going to do that for 20 years. But what I did is I learned, and I met a lot of the special agents, because we used to interview them for these reports, and agents from all agencies, DEA, FBI, Secret Service, U.S. Marine, you name them. And back then, INS and the U.S. Customs Service. And one day I said, I really want to do what these guys do. And I applied to be a U.S. Customs agent, special agent. I got hired, and I'm one of the first ones to go through that weird academy where it was DHS was officially created in 2003, but it really didn't come into fruition in 2004. That's when I went to the academy. And I graduated with U.S. Customs Special Agent, Department of Treasury credentials, a badge, but the certificate said Immigration and Customs Enforcement. It is all messed up. I went through the growing pains of a new agency where they forced Immigration and Naturalization Service special agents and U.S. Customs agents to be one. And it was very, very difficult. Everybody asked me, what are you? Are you Legacy Customs? Are you Legacy INS? And I'm like, I'm Legacy. Let's get the bad guy. I really never, I applied to the U.S. Customs Service. And really, to be honest, I didn't want to know much about human smuggling and human trafficking. That wasn't my thing. It was about the border. It was about the drugs, about the money laundering. And that's what I wanted to go in there to do. But that's actually what I started doing when I got back to the border. You're in the narcotics conspiracy group, taking down loads, getting sources. It was dope. In El Paso, you blink and you get a case, right? That's the type of I learned working on the border, also as a federal probation officer and parole officer, and even talking to all the other agents. It's very unique. The border is very unique. First of all, there's an overwhelming amount of work that no one else experiences. Even as a federal probation officer, when I went to that academy, they make you work for about 3 or 4 months before you go to the academy. And I had already done a bunch of pre-sentence reports. When I went to Washington, D.C., they asked us, how many of you have already done pre-sentence reports? And everybody raises their hands. And then how many of you have done more than 5? And I have my hand up. How many has done more than 10? More than 15? More than 20? And then the instructor is like, come on, you got to be kidding. So how many have you done? I said, I've done 33. And they didn't believe me. Everybody there had done maybe 1 or 2. And they're like, what do you mean you wrote 33 pre-sentence investigation reports? Well, I thought that was normal. It wasn't normal. A regular initial appearance day, and for those of you know, I don't want to insult anybody, is when you take the prisoner for this first appearance before the judge. A regular day in El Paso, a slow day, was 25.
Wow.
25 initial appearances. A busy day was 100.
Wow.
And when I went and arrested somebody in Colorado, in Denver, for a cocaine case once, and they all got excited because that day they had 2 special initial appearances, and they're all getting all excited because they're very busy because they have 2. And I'm like, what are you talking about? 2? That's it. So the reason I tell you that is you kind of get bred differently at the border because of the amount of work. I wrote criminal complaints. I mean, we did things a lot that the agent was responsible to do because the amount of work, there was nobody else to do it for us. So we did it. And so I became an agent, got assigned to El Paso, did the drug.
Hey, Victor, before we go into the agent, when you were a probation officer for the state, did you work a lot with the La Linea, with all the gangs from that were going from El Paso to Juarez at the time? I believe Aztecas, La Linea, Los Artistas. So you got a chance to work with these hardcore gang members, right?
Oh, yeah. The cartels already exposed her. As a matter of fact, to your perfect point, the Barrio Aztecas in El Paso, they were a street gang. They started off as a street gang. They became a jail gang, then a prison gang. And then they dominated the El Paso 915 sector. But then they started working, this was the mid-90s, and they started working with La Linea and the Juarez cartel. But there was a division amongst the Barrio Aztecas. You had the Barrio Aztecas from El Paso, and then you had another Barrio Azteca that was the enforcer for the cartel. And those are the guys that travel back and forth from Juarez to El Paso, killing, kidnapping, you name it. And a lot of them were Mexican nationals that were also Barrio Aztecas that were coming into El Paso illegally. Great point. Texas Syndicate, Mexican Mafia, many of those gangs. So I got exposed to a lot of street gangs, of course, worked a lot with the PDs because the cartels to this day, and we could talk about it, who do they use in the U.S. to push the fentanyl and the meth? The gangs. The big gangs, the Latin gangs, the Tango Blast in Houston. I mean, they use, these gangs are like this with the cartels. They work hand in hand to do that. So anyway, I was going to just say, so then there was an opportunity to, I did a big case and a couple of big cases in El Paso, got my name mentioned there. I wanted to do financial investigations. I got trained to do money laundering. I want to do the money because everybody says follow the money, right? And so I started working the Bank Secrecy Act, the suspicious activity reports from the banks, what they call the SARS, and really going after the money and a lot of bulk cash smuggling as well. As you guys know, drugs come north, money goes south, but then money comes back north, and that's sometimes a lot of people don't understand that. The money is infiltrated back into the U.S. in the banking system. Different deposits, avoiding the detections and all that. So I was working that, and in the middle of working that, I was working the financial investigations. There was an opportunity to go over to Juarez in 2008 to work at the consulate. But first of all, there was no consulate building yet. They were building it, and ICE was housed together with DEA in a private building with like architects and our accountants and stuff. It was not safe at all. It was just a regular private building. And let me tell you, I grew up there, and I know Juarez well, and I know El Paso like the back of my hand. And they were going through 350 homicides a month in Juarez. It was the most dangerous city in the world. So they needed a TD wire. I got selected. I went over there. They would pick me up at the bridge, pick me up in an armored vehicle, work there all day, and do it again all day, every day, like that. Very, very dangerous. The city was in shambles. Everybody was in their house by 7 p.m. And the cartel was just rampantly, man. The violence was. This is where I saw the bodies hanging from the bridges. This is where I got to see the bodies dug up from these clandestine, these cemeteries where they throw the bodies in there and they bury them. The acid drums and all that the cartels do. That really exposed me to all that, but it also exposed me to follow the investigations bigger and wider than just the old bag and tag that we used to call these cases, right? All of a sudden, you're like, wait a minute, there's a connection here. And that guy and this guy and this. And so you start doing a lot of work for other interior offices. Working there in Juarez, one time there was an opportunity to go to Mexico City on an arms trafficking case. And I got to go. I had never been to Mexico City in my life. And I fell in love with it. I had a friend that worked there, was a DEA agent, and he drove me around, and they put them up in nice areas. And I'm like, I could do this. This is cool.
Polanco, right?
I could live in Polanco, in Bosques de las Lomas. I could live there.
Yeah.
And so, everything kind of aligned in my career at that time. The position opened up. When I did my TDY, the attaché in Mexico City said, can you stay in Mexico City instead of going back to Juarez? And I said, okay, I'll stay in Mexico City. And I finished my TDY there. And actually, I just stayed there. I got hired. Eventually, brought my family into Mexico City. We all moved. I sold my house. And they're permanently, as a black passport holder, an accredited diplomat, working. And I was working the drugs and the cartels, all that. But they needed somebody to work the human trafficking. And I kind of skipped a little bit. I had been working human trafficking a lot in El Paso. I was head of the human trafficking task force. And I became a subject matter expert in human trafficking investigations and victim identification. And man, there was a lot of human trafficking. There is a lot of it still. But in Mexico, it was bad. And Mexico was about to pass their first federal anti-trafficking law. And so there was a lot of focus on human trafficking. This is 2009. And so we had case after we rescued a lot of kids. We rescued a lot of victims. We took down a lot of organizations, human trafficking organizations. And this is different. This is when the drug cartels were not involved in human trafficking. It was, you had the human smugglers, you had the human traffickers, and then you had the drug cartels. And I want people to understand that because that has evolved and that has changed in the recent years. And so the Mexican government was kind of like, I think, well, it's not, you're not messing with the cartels. So I remember taking the federal police into an interview with a victim once in Miami, and I didn't have time to train them. I just told them, listen, you just can't go in there and ask the victim if you're a human trafficking victim. We already know she is. I just kind of prepped them a little bit. But when they came out of that interview, they told me in Spanish, hey, vamos a agarrar estos cabrones. Let's go get these guys because of what they heard from the victim.
Yeah.
It was horrible, horrific. I mean, horrible stuff that they had done to this young girl. And they were like, even these rough, tough, corrupt police officers were like, let's go grab these guys, man. And so there was a humanitarian cause, whatever you want to call it, that they said, I can't believe these guys are doing this to this young girl. I said, yeah. And to babies and shit. Yes. So that inspired them. And so we went back and we were very successful. At least I was working hand in hand with the Mexican government, especially the prosecutor's office, la PGR. I flew with the attorney general and the deputy attorney general in their plane. We had an incredible relationship, and we were taking down a lot of human traffickers that were bringing victims to Houston, Atlanta, New York, Miami, and we were being successful. I even did a a Chinese smuggling case from China through Mexico through New York. So Mexico was the busiest that I had ever worked in my life, and it neglected my family. And I talked about this when I wrote the book because I was very conflicted. I love my job. I love being out there, and I hated neglecting my family, even though my wife was very supportive. Even it got to the point in Mexico where my wife was, hey, what's going on, man? Hey, you're like here out of 2-3 days out of the month. What are you doing? And so it started hurting my family life, and I didn't like that. And so all of 2010 was very tough. Then we go into 2011. I promised my wife, listen, I'm going to try to settle down here and not travel enough. But it almost seems like I did it on purpose, because starting in 2011, I mean, as soon as the year came in, I'm in Guatemala, Panama, Denver, Arizona, and I was doing a big Afghan smuggling case. And so I was doing a little human trafficking courses and trainings. It was just very, very busy. But my wife didn't want that much of it anymore. She's like, okay, I get it, but enough is enough. Because my kids didn't even, like, what are you asking me? They would ask me at home, what are you doing here, Dad? And it doesn't feel good as a father when your own kids tell you that. And so, of course, then the infamous date of February 15, 2011, Agent Zapata and I were sent on this dubious assignment to go pick up some equipment. I was the last one to know. There was no briefing. I challenged the assignment. But when you get ordered, you get ordered. Even though we had the intel, we were prohibited from driving on that highway per the ambassador's orders. There was a big alert issued. You can't drive on there. It says on there you're prohibited from driving on there for personal or business reasons, but my bosses ignored it. They wanted this equipment for a big money laundering case that Mexico was working as well. And we got sent. No escort, no Mexican escort, no U.S. escort. It's just him and I in my Suburban. And on the way back, we were forced off the highway and ambushed by Los Zetas cartel. Obviously, we didn't know there were Zetas at that time, but a lot of things happened there. You probably heard the story. They opened the door, and my window came down a couple of inches, where they introduced an AK-47 and a handgun and opened fire into the cabin. And Agent Zapata tragically lost his life in the line of duty. I got hit 3 times, and a lot of things happened. We got rescued after 40 minutes, which is a long, long time. And of course, that changed my life and that of my family's, because we were evacuated from Mexico. I reunited with my family, and then the whole other aftermath starts, which is I call it the real nightmare, because the shooting in itself, as dramatic as that was horrible, but the aftermath kept on happening for year after year, and it was very, very, very difficult. We went through a lot of dark years.
Hey, Victor, the type of vehicle that you had, was it a level 1, 2, 3, or 4? What level was it?
So it was my understanding it was a level 4. And let me tell you about these levels, because in Mexico, every car, armored vehicles are like Honda Accords, right? They're everywhere. Yeah. And then people started saying, that's a level 12. Like, what the hell is a level 12? I've never heard of a level 12. So I started like kind of looking into it, because they have dealerships just for armored vehicles in Mexico. And so I'm understanding this is a true level 4, which obviously withstood AK-47 rounds. The shot that you saw in the picture of the front is after the initial shooting. We crashed and we ended up in the median, but then they did a U-turn, one of the SUVs, and you see the A and B, that's right at me. And they pointed at me, these 2 that you see right there on the passenger seat. And they try to penetrate the glass by shooting in the same location. And if you shoot enough, it will go through. As a matter of fact, the glass inside started bubbling. And that's what armored glass does. It started bubbling, and I'm just, I'm here, grace of God, that they stopped and they ran back into the SUV and took off. But those are the 2 guys that got life sentences after they were all arrested and extradited to the U.S. But this is the Piolín. This is the guy that actually opened the door initially. And it's so funny. I had a conversation today about this, about when the vehicle was programmed from the factory, that when you place it in park, it unlocks all 4 doors. Not anymore.
Wow.
And believe it or not, there's been other issues around the country with that issue of crimes being committed because of that. Jaime closed the door immediately, and that's when we hit the buttons to lock the doors, but my window was rolled down a couple of inches. So these guys were all caught and extradited. The sentences were crap. This guy got 35 years. They went 35 down to 12 years. The 2 that went to trial, they pled guilty, by the way. The ones that went to trial got life imprisonment. It didn't make any sense to me. They all should have been in life. But, the U.S. government sometimes sees things very differently than we see it, which is very striking to me because I was a federal probation officer before. So I knew the court system, and they couldn't fool me. I worked there before. I know that the negotiations that go in the behind the scenes and all that. And I don't know what the federal government, our government, was thinking by giving these guys that type of a deal.
Well, what was the equipment? I mean, what was so important about that equipment that they would allow you to drive by yourselves, no escort on roads you're not supposed to be on? What was so important about that?
Great question. And I'm going to share something that I don't share a lot. I've shared it a couple of times publicly, but not on podcast. I'll share it with you today because I think it's important. So the equipment, the whole time up until 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago, I thought that it was just electronic equipment, surveillance equipment, and tracking devices for that big money laundering case that we were working on. Some of the equipment was going to be for us, and the rest of the equipment, most of it actually, was going to be for the Mexican government to work this case. Apparently, that might not have been the case, and I'm right now trying to find out what were the contents of those boxes, because 2.5 years ago, a colleague of mine, not part of this agency, someone separate, I met him in person, and he told me that possibly the contents were not what I thought they were, that maybe they were my boss's household goods. And you heard that right. It was his shit from his house. And so you can imagine me hearing that and thinking, what are you talking about? Like, it's kind of mind blowing, right? And so I said, okay, I'm going to request. I have right here next to me in my office, I have all the documents, thousands of pages of evidence and logs and everything that I have from the court, because as a victim of the crime, you get access to all this. Well, I went through every single piece of paper, and guess what I didn't find? And I know you guys know, because I know you guys know this, the evidence log. Where is the log that they logged in everything that was in the Suburban? And I'm talking about when they found my Garth Brooks CD or whatever they found in the Suburban. You have to log it in like you do any crime scene, right? When we go do a crime scene, that somebody takes a piece of paper and I said, I found this drink in the middle, and you say where you found it and how you found it, and you take a picture of it. I knew there had to be this because I have pictures of people taking pictures of the boxes outside of the Suburban, logging them in. So I request this from the U.S. Attorney's Office, and of course, they look at me like I'm an idiot, and they're like, "What are you talking about, Victor? What log?" And I'm like, are you kidding me? I want the evidence log of everything that was in the Suburban. Then they said, oh, okay. Well, that I'm talking to you about was 2 years ago, and they haven't turned it over. And now I'm starting to think, well, why wouldn't they turn it over? Because it's going to disclose the real belongings or contents of those boxes. And maybe the reason why this whole shit happened to me and my family, and we got treated the way we treated, was maybe because our boss sent us on his own personal errand. Or maybe it has nothing to do with, I thought it was Fast and Furious because 2 of the weapons were linked to Fast and Furious. I thought it was that. I thought maybe because we sued the government, we were trying to get answers. But maybe not. Maybe it was as simple as this. So as disgusting as that is, as you guys hear it, I'm still fighting it, by the way. I literally talked to Judicial Watch, who is representing me pro bono. They're trying to get that information. And the last time, 2 weeks ago, they said, Victor, they're going to send the evidence log. And I got all excited. I said, okay, good. Let's get it. You know what they sent? They sent all the evidence of the ballistics of all the rounds that hit the Suburban. You know how they do these kind of like these sticks that they put through every round. So there was over 120 some rounds shot at the Suburban, and it's all that is logged in. Bullet lodged here, undercarriage lodged here. Every single bullet is lodged. And I'm like, okay, great, bullets. What are the boxes? That's not in there. The box is not in there. My folder that I had from my car where I kept my mileage and the gas and all that they told me was in there, but they continued to avoid telling me what was in the boxes.
Victor, before we continue with the Fast and Furious with the weapons, we're going to get a quick word from our sponsor. In today's 1 Peter 2:9, but you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praise of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. 1 Peter 2:9. With that said, tell us about the weapons. Fast and Furious, how did this come in? Tell us about the lawsuit.
Exactly 2 months before our shooting, December 15, 2010, Border Patrol agent Brian Terry was murdered by Operation Fast and Furious weapons. Operation Fast and Furious was an operation under President Obama and Biden and Attorney General Eric Holder that they allowed thousands of weapons under their watch to walk into Mexico. In other words, just go into Mexico with no further tracking, no further enforcement. And everybody says there's about 2,000 weapons. There's a lot more weapons than that went into Mexico, straight into the hands of the cartel. Mexico was not made aware of it. Even the ATF agents in Mexico didn't know that was happening. So there was no enforcement at the border. You know, we did controlled deliveries all the time. I could see how the government could say, you know what, here's 700 AK-47s coming from Phoenix, from a gun shop in Phoenix that a straw purchaser purchased, meaning a person that's clean background that they send in there. They buy them with the permission of the ATF, allowing the gun shop to do it, because the gun shop would never, let 700 AK-47s go. But the ATF told them, no, go ahead. This is a federal investigation. Go ahead and sell them. Okay. So then they take 700 weapons. We could have followed those into Mexico and with an operation and taken them down, but they never did that. They never wanted to do that. And in December of 2010, Agent Brian Terry was killed with one of those weapons. Well, you fast forward to February, and after they recovered the weapons from our shooting, they actually recovered a bunch of weapons, and 3 were linked to that operation. I can't prove the third one. That's why I always say 2. I have the ballistics reports right here of the ATF that these weapons came from, one from Dallas and one from Houston, because Operation Fast and Furious started in Phoenix, but it expanded into New Mexico and into Texas. And that's what Operation Fast and Furious wanted to be. They wanted to be the model, and they were going to do this across the nation. And so our case proves that, in fact, they were doing it because these weapons were recovered. And I have the videos and all that of the guys that got arrested that they bought the guns from. But so we sued the government. It's very hard to sue the federal government. They have a lot of immunities. Eventually, everything was dismissed. There was no recovery. Guess why? Because Obama asserted executive privilege on all of these documents. Therefore, they're protected, and we cannot get access to them. The judge, in our case, from the Southern District of Texas, kept on asking us, well, give me the documents. I believe you guys. I'm sympathetic to you. I just need you to prove it. And we would tell the judge, well, we can't judge because the government won't give them to us. We asked for them, and they would give us these redacted sheets of paper, and never got it. Eventually, everything was dismissed, and that's been years ago that happened. And so it's somebody at one point will have to answer for Operation Fast and Furious, because not only has it killed 2 U.S. federal agents, it's killed thousands and thousands of Mexican nationals, man. And the cartels are heavily armed, as you guys know.
Hey, Victor, when these guys were taken into custody, did the cartel, did Los Zetas give them up, or were you guys able to identify exactly who they were? Because we've seen that before, that once the U.S. government gets involved, the cartels will just pick somebody off the street, send them over there. We've seen that before. How were these guys identified? Were they taken into custody, or did Los Zetas give them up?
No, the Zetas definitely did not give him up. They went to pick him up, and hopefully one day, one of my coworkers, part of this operation, which I can't talk a lot about, but I could tell you this way: it was an old school operation, an old school operation between Mexico and the U.S. federal government, and they went and got him. Old school. I'll leave it. I'll leave it like that. I think you guys understand that.
Yes.
And I mean, it was great. It was great. But what happened is the Zetas then, after the fact, then they disowned them. After they caught them, after they were extradited, then the Zetas, the hierarchy said they're not. They're abandoned. They basically abandoned them and they're on their own. Although they did provide initial attorneys for them at the beginning. I think
in the United States or in Mexico? In the United States or in Mexico?
United States. In the United States.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Never heard of that.
Yeah, initially they this is, by the way, this is the fastest extradition I had ever seen. I worked a lot of extraditions. This is the fastest I ever seen. And yeah, initially I think the Zetas were thinking about it like, do we protect them or not? And then they saw, oh no, shit, this is not going to go well, so they just abandoned them.
Victor, I traveled that same highway, Highway 57, when I was in Mexico for 3 years. Rules had changed for us. We were in 2 SUVs, escort, but even being escorted by the state police, federal police, we had always decided we're never stopping, even if they try to stop us, because we knew what had happened to you guys. So when one of the times we're driving through that, our escort got lost. Like when somebody was supposed to leapfrog and jump in, they weren't there. And just as we're driving, I don't remember if we're in Zacatecas or San Luis Potosí, a caravan, two trucks pulled up next to us, SUVs, and they turned and they looked at us. And I don't know who they were, but they pulled up, glanced at us, pulled up alongside, stared into us, into our SUV. We saw a rifle being held this way, and then they just took off. And you mentioned everybody's driving in armored vehicles. I mean, that's pretty common. You see them everywhere. But did they ever say, did they want to carjack you? What was the deal? What was their motive?
They never said the motive. The believe it or not, the U.S. government kept on kind of gave them the storyline. Oh, this was a carjacking. This was a carjacking. I'm here to tell you this was not a carjacking. This has nothing to do with a carjacking. They destroyed this vehicle if they really wanted it. And so they knew that we were Americans. They testified to it. I yelled them in Spanish, somos americanos de la embajada de diplomático. They knew it because I yelled it. And for all these years, from 2011 to the 2017, I thought, man, I was doubting, did they hear me now? No, they testified. They said, we heard them. You know what they said? They testified that they heard me so much saying that I was an American that they thought I was the ambassador. And so they knew we were Americans. And you know this, Robert, that in many, many instances, U.S. law enforcement have been pulled over in Mexico and held at gunpoint many times, DEA agents, FBI agents. And as soon as they identify themselves, the cartel says, oh, shit. And then they kind of let them go. That didn't happen here. They had the opportunity. This was not a 7-second shooting. This was a 2-minute shooting. And you guys know this. In law enforcement, 2 minutes is a
long time.
This is not a 7-second minute. No. This thing was drawn out. There was plenty of opportunity for them to get the hell out and say, oh, shit, it's the wrong car. I told them in Spanish, we're not who you think we are. Whoever you think we are, you're confusing us. We're Americans. Let me show you my diplomatic passport. I mean, there was an opportunity for them to say, oh, but I think at that point, they said, we're going to take them out. Now, I'll tell you, we're not going to kill Victor Avila and Jaime Zapata. That they didn't know us personally, but they knew we were Americans.
Right, because we also have clearly displayed the diplomatic plates on our cars.
Diplomatic plates.
And I at crossing the border to Tijuana on foot, I got stopped by Inami, and they asked for my passport. I gave them my regular passport. They start giving me a bunch of crap. The black passport came out, and all of a sudden it's like, ay, disculpe, it's un malentendido, it's a misunderstanding. They let me go. once they see the black passport?
Yeah, the black passport it does at the airport and at the checkpoints, and
Right.
a lot of people thought that this was a checkpoint situation. It was not. I've been through many checkpoints: legal, illegal, cartel, military, police. I've been through them. You learn to navigate with these guys, how you approach, how you talk to them. The initial soldier that comes up to you, hey, da 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 da, get the supervisor, da da da, and then you clear it, and then they let you through. I've done it many times. This was not that. There was no checkpoint. These guys ambushed us from the highway as we were riding.
Hey, Doug has a quick question. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah. Now, I read somewhere about some of the convictions being overturned in the appellate court because of jurisdictional issues. So you weren't covered as an American citizen outside of the U.S. under federal law, and then there was some case law or some new legislation that came out. Can you kind of expound on that?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. So in 2019, I get a call from the U.S. Attorney's Office that the two of the defendants, the ones that shot through the window, tried to shoot me there, they appealed their sentence, saying that the murder conviction, the murder statute used to convict them, was invalid because the murder happened in Mexico, outside of the country, extraterritorially. And the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals agreed with them, and they dismissed the murder charge. They vacated it. And all of a sudden, there's nobody in custody for the murder of Agent Zapata. They're still in custody for my attempted murder. There was another charge of an attempted murder of an internationally protected person, and then weapons charges. Well, they remain in custody for that, but no longer for the murder. I had to call the Zapata family and inform them of this. I was kind of the communicator between the government and the Zapata family. Devastating news, devastating. So I'm like, what do I do? I called congressmen, senators that I knew, and the Federal Law Enforcement Officer Association, FLIOA. I called them, and they have a lot of presence on the Hill, and they said, let's fix this. So we did. It took us 2 years to fix it. Nancy Pelosi kept on blocking it from hitting the floor, but eventually she couldn't block it anymore because there was strong bipartisan support. And really all we wanted to know is it was a one-pager. We changed it to where it didn't matter where the murder occurred. It didn't matter where the offense occurred. We also added protections for the family of the employee as well. And so in November of 2021, President Biden signed it. Believe it or not, you can't make this up. I mean, shit, it's right. It's hanging on my wall right here. He signed the Jaime Zapata and Victor Avila Federal Officer and Employee Protection Act into law. And I'm very proud of that we got that done, because at least there'll be, this is the law that the U.S. uses. This is the one that we've always used. So now it has our name of it. Unfortunately, they didn't invite us to the ceremony because, that was horrible. That hurt me that we didn't get invited. The Zapata family didn't get invited to go to the ceremony where Biden sat at the desk and all the people behind him. They should have been there. At least the Zapata family should have been there. But nevertheless, we got that done and changed it. But it wasn't retroactive to our case.
Right.
So we had to go back. So last year, a year ago, this May last year, we went back to get those two guys resentenced, because now they had to resentence without the murder charge. And guess what? Now they're looking at a sentence of up to life imprisonment, not a mandatory life sentence. And we begged the judge. Man, I begged him. I told him what he would be doing if he didn't do it. And luckily he did resentence them back to life in prison plus 20 years.
Go ahead, Bobby. I think you had a question, Bobby.
Yes. So in other words, and I never heard this part. I read the book, and it's been maybe a year and a half since I read your book. But one of the things that I almost feel like our government had a narrative they want to push. They want the carjacking, because to me the carjacking didn't make sense. And what you mentioned, I've been in Tamaulipas, I've been in Ciudad Victoria, Reynosa, some of really bad places. There's no police. There's cartel checkpoints.
Yeah.
You come up to a checkpoint, they're not cops. They're armed gunmen that are Mexican organized crime. And when they see your diplomatic plate, in a big city, they'll wave you through. Where you guys are at, that's a very desolate area where you guys are out.
It was very desolate, past San Luis Potosí, in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the country. A lot of people thought that this happened at the border. I said, no, this was in the middle, down deep in Mexico. And but you know what? Yeah, I think the Obama, well, obviously I have other personal issues there, but I think it's political. It became political, and somehow we suffer for it because I don't think they wanted another agent that was killed with those weapons under their operation, and that would have just devastated the Obama legacy and maybe his re-election in 2012. And then you had Benghazi on top of that. By the way, there was Fast and Furious weapons found in Benghazi and used in Benghazi as well. A lot of people don't know that. This is how much these weapons have been traveled all over the world. There was a big mass shooting in France, if you guys remember, about 5 years ago?
Right.
Fast and Furious weapon. So they've been committing a lot of crimes around the world, and that's all on the blood is all on the Obama and Biden people and Eric Holder.
Hey, Victor, how did the lawsuit go against the government? Did you win the lawsuit, or is it still going on?
No, it got dismissed. All of it was dismissed.
Really?
All of it was dismissed. So they started dismissing it in chunks. Dismissed, until we were holding on to a last portion. Eventually, the court, they dismissed everything. They called it for summary judgment. Dismissed with no recovery. Nothing ever happened. Nothing. There's no accountability. Nobody got laid off. Nobody got a slap on the wrist.
Really?
Nothing. So then I went to Office of Special Counsel, OSC, and they took my case and they said, well, Office of Special Counsel is this office that kind of polices the government, right? Mm-hmm. And they're like, what the heck happened? You know that I never got interviewed by ICE? I only did one interview throughout this whole time. And you guys are investigators. Mm-hmm. FBI interviewed me one time by my bedside in San Luis Potosí, and that's it. But you guys know that anytime anything happens with any police agency, it doesn't matter if FBI comes in, you do your own internal investigation.
Right.
And if ICE had not even opened a case. And one of my good friends who was assigned to Mexico said, where's the ICE case? Where's our case? I mean, we open a case for a car accident. When an agent is involved in a car accident, we have to open our own case. It doesn't matter if the PD does or whatever they do. We have to do our own thing. And then they eventually said, oh, yeah, we better open that case. I never got interviewed. Never got interviewed by OPR, never got interviewed by anybody. So then years later, after the trial, OSC, Office of Special Counsel, they opened an investigation and forced the Department of Homeland Security to look into it based on my allegations. And my allegations were all of this that we're talking about. And they finally got two OPR agents to come talk to me, and I told them everything. They went to Mexico, and man, it was very, very disheartening because I then got access to what they did, who they did interview back then in 2011, my attaché, my deputy attaché, my supervisor, and the lies that these guys said.
Really?
Very, very, it made me want to throw up, man. You know what my supervisor said, my immediate supervisor? He had the balls to say this. He said that he told me that he volunteered to go in my place.
What?
And I said, really? Motherfucker? Sorry for the language.
It's all right. It's all right.
And I get upset because every time I think back, I said, really? Yeah. If he would have told me, I'll go, I would have told him, great, I didn't want to go. You should have gone because I was busy. I'm working here, you know?
Yeah.
We're not doing anything. He said that he told me and that I told him, oh, no, you stay. I'll go. I mean, ridiculous lies like that. And that my boss had told us where to go, what route to take, and all these ridiculous lies. I finally saw that just a few years ago. And so anyway, Office of Special Counsel recommended some kind of consequence, and eventually they forced kind of, because it took another year or two for the attaché to retire. That's it. Oh, by the way, after the shooting, they all got promoted. The attaché got promoted. The deputy attaché is a SAC of Miami still to this day. these guys are still active in high positions.
Victor, one of the things you're telling me this. I experienced something kind of similar where I had a boss from Mexico City call and say, "Hey, Bobby, we're going to send some instructors to Tamaulipas," which was the Wild West. You don't send people there. At that time, I couldn't even go there unless I had a small army picking me up at the airport. And they said, "We're going to send them down there so they can teach a course, and we're going to send them down there in rental cars from Mexico City to Tamaulipas." And they said, "Not armored vehicles, just rental cars." And I said, "We can't do that. There's instructions. It's off limits." And the boss says, "You don't understand. They're third-party contractors. They don't fall under our rules. So we're going to send them." And I was like, that was my area. I was the boss. I said, "You're not sending them here," because in the back of my mind, I'm constantly thinking what happened to you and Jaime. And I said, "No, I had to go above his head and cause a big stink, and people were being yelled at, and he didn't talk to me. He didn't talk to me after
Especially in Tamaulipas. But by the way, it's still hot. It's very hot right now as we speak. It's probably one of the hottest zones right now with the Gulf Cartel and CDN going at it.
Right. But his whole thing is they're third-party contractors. It doesn't matter. And I said, "Listen, I'm not going to go down there and put these guys in body bags if they get shot up. We're not sending them out to a firing squad. It's not happening." I had to go above his head, and it caused some problems in our office. And but anyway, step further after we're running short on time. But what was the aftermath with you personally, with your career? How did this affect your career, your family?
Well, my career, I didn't know it ended. I say it kind of dramatically, but it ended up kind of being true. I lost my career that day. I didn't know it.
Right.
I went to DC, recovered. I ended up in Spain a couple of years. They kicked me out. Ended up in Denver. They didn't want me back. And it's very hard as a loyal federal employee to be the last one to kind of think. I had PTSD. I had nightmares. I was a mess. Depressed, anxiety. I was a mess. And I just needed help, and I was getting better. But it was the agency that was the one causing a lot of the stress and the anxiety. And it took a long time, and I was the last one to find out these guys are not going to give me my job back. I'm never going to be a special agent again. And it wasn't until a friend of mine said, "Why don't you consider an early retirement?" At 19 years, 8 months of service. And they said, early retirement, they calculated like if it was 20 years, you get a little bit more money every month. And they shut that down. So I went the medical route. And in May of 2015, I got a medical retirement. I wrote the book, became a public speaker, dabbled into politics, as you know, doing a lot of news hits, news conference, all that stuff. And working with a lot of nonprofits right now. I'm big on securing the border. I try to share my expertise as much as I can. And also my personal story, because my personal story then became not so much the police tactics of it, because I talk to a lot of police groups and they never care about so much about the shooting. At least they don't ask me about that. But you know what they do ask me? They ask me about my family. They ask me about the PTSD. They ask me about the aftermath and how I got through it, because there's a lot of police officers and law enforcement officers going through difficult times. And I tell them, you don't have to get shot in the line of duty to have a trauma in your life. The trauma comes from many, many different avenues. I've read a lot of books. I really educated myself on PTSD. And by the way, PTSD, there's many different types. I never had my agency, I think, if something's wrong with Victor, yes, PTSD, he's going to kill somebody. I never had that. I was never violent. I was never violent towards myself or towards anybody. I was just a depressed anxiety guy. That's what I had. And I know there's other ones that are violent. So you have to understand the different types of PTSDs, and you have to want to educate yourself. And so I bring that to the audiences and want to share my story and let them know what I've been through and why I'm here in front of them now, being able to share this with them. Because I always say, if you're alive, there's a solution.
Hey, Victor, time is against us. We're at the 1 hour mark. But listen, if you could look at your calendar, you don't have to do it now, but July 10th, we would love to have you back. If you're available July 10th, it's on a Wednesday at 5 o'clock. So we could continue what happened after the shooting. We could really dwell into it, talk about PTSD, because I also suffer from PTSD. and I've co-written one book on PTSD. We'd really like to talk about that. But brother, what an honor, man, to have you on us. Thank you for your outstanding service. My respect and love for the Zapata family. Prayers for them. Mil gracias, hermano. And please look at your calendar. Let us know. With that said, brother, we definitely, if you can't come that day, give us a date. We will have the show. With that said, Bobby, any last words, brother?
No, like I talked to Victor, but we're talking offline before we jumped on. What happened with with Jaime's death, obviously tragic. Those losing a brother and losing a sister really hurts us. But like I said, that doesn't define you, because I know people that knew you before that happened. And I know the type of agent you were. You had an incredible career leading up to that. We could have had a show talking to you just about your career, apart from what happened with the death of Agent Zapata. So we would love to have you back. And I'll tell you what, like I said, much love and respect for the Zapata family and for you and your family, Victor.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot, Robert. Thank you so much. And I'm down July 10th. I got it. Let's do it.
Awesome. Big Doug, any last words?
I just want to say thank you very much. I've never heard, I'm a kind of a news junkie, and I've never heard any other cases regarding Fast and Furious other than the Border Patrol agent. I never heard any of that other stuff. And it's just, to me, it's just amazing what gets squashed. And I should know better, coming from a large police agency originally, but it just amazes me what happens out there.
But it kind of tells you how successful they were at quashing it, right? They kept me silent for many years afterwards, and they had me in the corner. Nobody knew where I was. Nobody knew, hey, where's Victor? But they were really successful because they kind of had everybody kind of threatened. Don't you talk to them? Don't you email them? And it worked. It worked for the first several years until one day I snapped out of it. I said, that's enough of this.
And I want to thank you too for going forward with that legislation, because when I read that, I'd never heard that before. Another thing that no one hears about.
That's
and
right.
Why it would get stalled for so many years is beyond me, but it's all politics, I guess.
Congress, yeah. That's another.
Hey, brother, we got George Norris, who's the president of IGLIA, International Latino Gang Investigator Association for the East Coast. He says his saludos to you. Great
Saludos,
man.
George. Saludos.
He was on our show and he talked about the MS-13. Great show. He's coming back also. With that said, brother, mil gracias, and we'll see you on the 10th. And happy 4th of July to you and your family.
You guys next month.
Thank you, Victor.
Take care.
Man, Bobby, mil gracias. Man, what a outstanding show, outstanding episode, outstanding story. My God, outstanding.
When this deal happened, I believe I was in Iraq when it happened. But another thing that happened, I think it was in 2012, some CIA agents outside of Mexico City with I think he was a officer of La Marina, the Mexican Navy, were just driving outside of Mexico City. I think they were heading to a meeting. They got attacked by, I think it was federal police. They ambushed them. And it was the same thing. They knew who they were, and they were attacked. They were injured. And luckily, those guys got sentenced. They got some lengthy sentences for what under Mexican law. But there's a risk that guys take. There's guys willing to go down to Mexico to do this type of work, and other parts of the world, which is so disheartening, is our own government betraying us and cleaning their hands of us. Because you and I know, you two, you know that a lot, Doug, there's a lot of these guys, these bosses, that are only looking for that next bump up in a promotion. And to the guys at the ground level, I know a lot of people that knew Victor. I never met him until recently. We were friends online, but everybody that knew Victor said he was a hell of an agent. So I have a lot of respect for him, and I'm very happy he came on our show.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Go ahead, Doug. Do you have something else to say?
No, I was just going to say I'd be fascinated to hear both post and pre the shooting, because it sounded like he was involved in quite a few investigations that made a big difference in people's lives and such before the shooting happened. And I'd be interested to hear some of those stories also.
Hey, Bobby, before we talk about next week's guest, it's going to be outstanding next week. Let me just push his book. Once again, if you guys get a chance, buy this book. It's only $17.34 on Amazon. I personally have not bought it, but as soon as this show's over, I'm going to get on Amazon. I'm going to buy that book. And by the time he comes on the 10th, I'm going to have read. I already would have read it, and I'll have a lot of questions behind it. Agent Under Fire by Victor Avila. Please get that book. It is an outstanding book. Highly recommended. With that said, Bobby, tell us about next week's guest. We have a big event coming up June 30th, Sunday, June 30th, and I'm going to be flying down. I'll be at the cemetery with you and Sal. Hopefully we'll have other cops there. We'll have a nice drink. We'll smoke a cigar, and I'm probably going to get us live on the show there while we're basically celebrating the life of a DEA agent who was murdered. With that said, tell us about our guest next week, and here we go.
Yeah, next week we're going to have retired Sergeant Clark Simmons. Clark and I worked together in the gang unit. We also worked together in NARCS. And Clark is a very humble person. I called him and I said, our show, we like highlighting. We want to highlight and honor Agent Foss, but we also like highlighting some of the legendary cops. And immediately he stopped me. He says, I'm no legend. I said, Clark, you had a legendary career. Clark was a hustler. He worked cases. He was, for being a gringo, he was buying kilos of coke. He did some really good deals. Not bad for a white boy. And he's a worker, just an absolute hard worker. And he'd be one of us. He would fit in with us, having a drink, having a bourbon with us. But Clark Simmons, retired Phoenix police sergeant, and he was on the task force and tragically was one of the two people that walked in and literally recovered Richard's body when he was killed.
Oh. Yeah. It's going to be a great episode. And also on Tuesday, I believe you're going to get a call from Benny, Bobby, because we're going to have Sal on our show, and we're going to be honoring on the Gray Line next Tuesday at 5 o'clock. We're going to be honoring Richard and his family. So if you can, please get me pictures of him with his family. If you could reach out to them, because Benny's going to put together a beautiful video for the show. And also, we'll let you and Sal pick the song. So if you guys could get us pictures of him, the sooner the better, maybe tomorrow, so Benny could do his magic for the show. With that said, any last words, Big Doug?
No, I'm just looking forward to some of the episodes coming up. It's going to be fun.
It's going to be outstanding. Bobby, any last words?
Nope, just yet. Share the show if you like it. Like the episode, and we hope to have plenty of great guests in the future. Really enjoy this program that we put together.
Yes, outstanding. With that said, guys, God bless you. Have a great weekend, man. God bless you guys.
Used to spend my nights out in ballroom. Liquor was the only love I'd known. But you rescued me from reaching for the bottom and brought me back. Far gone. You're as smooth as Tennessee whiskey.